This video is on toy guns, slightly serious toy guns, blank firing guns, and simulation guns, and then up to technically dangerous but still toy guns by definition, although it's kind of silly like air guns, and finally supposedly illegal guns when they're not, and becoming a licensed gunsmith. This video is not on how to make an illegal weapon, because why would you do that when it's perfectly legal to make a weapon that's legit and will never actually get you into trouble? Depending on what state you're in, they do not restrict you, most likely, from making at least one type of pistol or rifle or shotgun, because legally speaking, they're not allowed to in most ways. It's not legal to do that in many ways, unless, there's some other out. You can't make a set of laws that make it literally impossible to acquire a gun, as long as you're legally not restricted in any way federally. The states aren't supposed to restrict you so much that you can't get one. I'm not qualifying California, because California is just a giant mess, but let's get on with this first question. Zip guns. And I'm saying that very specifically, and now the following disclaimer. I'm going to tell people how not to make a zip gun, because you don't have to. Because you can actually use the same instructions to make an actual, real, functioning gun. But we're going to start really simple. Start small, and then go completely, literally ballistic test. How thick of the tubing, and what type of tubing material is needed to withstand the force of a .22 caliber blank? Why would you use a blank? Some of you who do movies know why. Because blanks require a lot more engineering than an actual bullet, but you can use them, especially if they're overdriven or proof blanks, that actually exists, by the way, to test a gun. Why would you do it? What good would it be? For testing a deliberately weak gun, a toy plastic gun, or more accurately, a plastic version of what you would make in metal, to force it to break on the test bench with something that would never break a normal gun, even if it's badly made. See also Saturday Night Specials made out of material that broke in dumb locations. Can you use a car brake line or a hollow radio antenna to fire a blank, or even fire a live round? Now, the reason this video should not be restricted or whatever is it's intended for people that you would want to never do these things. You do not have to build any of these when you can buy an actual pistol that has passed security and safety tests in California, where they're a real bitch about it, for less than $50. If you need to buy a pistol, you can buy one. Look up the varieties that are cheap, and then look for one for sale in your area from a store, from a shop. Ask around. It's not that difficult. If you're in a state that requires that you register it, just go ahead and do so. And if you want to experiment making a blank gun to simply learn how the engineering works, this video is for you. Working pressure versus burst pressure. Burst pressure is the maximum pressure at which you are risking bursting the tubing. This is based on boilers. Yeah, we're talking about steam engine, steampunk boilers. The tubing standards are based on what pressure rating they have, PSI, or thousands of PSI, and working pressure rather than burst pressure. Working pressure is almost always 1/10 of the burst pressure. Not always, but usually, depending on the purpose it's intended for. But if the pipe doesn't say it's for a specific purpose, then that's a good rule of thumb. What's the pressure rating for .22 caliber bullets? The reason we're picking this is .22 caliber bullets are not the lowest pressure item you're going to look up. No, they're not. There are shotgun shells that have lower pressure requirements, because they take the energy and spread it out over a larger area initially. .22 caliber bullets start off with a really small area filled maybe to the brim with propellant that expands 1,000 to 1 as fast as possible. Yeah, it may have a higher pressure than maybe your AR, an AR rifle. A longer barrel on a gun indicates that it's trying to spread the pressure out longer. It might use a slower expanding propellant, maybe even actual gunpowder, which burns slower. It does not burn as a high explosive. 21,000 pounds per square inch for a 22 caliber short pistol round. 22,000 freaking pounds per square inch is pretty heavy. 24,000 psi for long rifle and 22 Magnum. They're almost equivalent. And if you want to use the latest doohickey, a 22 caliber blank that's shrunk down to fire basically a pellet gun pellet, 17 HMR, it's 26,000 psi. Now, is that impulse during the shot peak, or is that averaged? Okay, steel pipe sizing is based on the inside diameter. Why? Because the outside diameter is normally directly related to its PSI rating or schedule rating, strength number. The thickness and the outside diameter are dynamic. The inside diameter is what they're rated for because that's the only thing you can make standardized, because that would be your fittings size. PSI versus wall thickness with example of 3/4 inch piping. This is only 3/4 inch piping here because I'm bringing it up because a lot of you are going to look this up. You found the video. Schedule 40 is rated to 13,000 psi. Or, well, it has a wall thickness of 0.113 inches. And it actually has a 3,000 to 10,000 psi range depending on thickness of metal and diameters and every other characteristic if you look it up not looking at 3/4 inch pipe. The range on Schedule 80 is 4,000 to 14,000 psi depending on diameter, etc., and even material type. We'll change these things. I'm bulking it up here. But that one has at Schedule 80 17,000 psi because it has a 0.178 inch thickness shell. Now, slow down a minute. Okay, well, here we go with Schedule 160. It's 25,000 psi rated, and it's 0.218 or 0.22 thickness of the shell. But the inner diameter, again, is still stabilized in this example at 3/4 inch. If we look up XXS and XS, which is the Schedule 80, but XXS is Schedule 200 something, but it's called XXX, extra strong, and that's 35,000 psi, and it has 0.308 wall thickness. You notice the numbers seem to look really familiar, but its actual rating is 10 to 30,000 psi. But its working pressure is always 1,000 psi only. That's the hardcore stuff, and it's only 1,000 psi. Again, your 22 caliber short bullet, because the bullet is in the chamber, is at 21,000 psi. If you don't put anything in the barrel, it has a high psi rating, but you divide it by 10, so it's about 2,000 psi. Even a blank might rupture a pipe like that. What about 4140 steel outer diameter, 9.8 millimeter, or 5/16 or 0.3125 inch barrel liner. Actual, real fucking barrel liner material. That's rated to fire the dang bullets all the way up, long, short, Magnum, it doesn't give a shit. A Magnum might push it, but that's not the rating problem. What is its PSI rating? Well, it's non-chambered, it's for the part that's rifled, and you'd have to integrate it into an exterior casing. Comes in 26 and 3/8 inch long, usable length only 25 inches, or 32 inch long, usable length pieces of tubing. What is it rated for? Well, this is actually made for barrel for a gun, but the rating on it is a specific PSI rating. I'll leave a link to it if you want to look it up. But it doesn't say the PSI rating as what you might think it would be. Now, what do you look up when you look up brake line tubing? Well, it's rated to 5,000 psi, period, full stop. 5,000, not 50,000, not 21,000. And it's SAE 527, that's 5,270, whatever, brazed, double-walled, low-carbon steel tubing. It's rated at 5,000 psi. Excuse me, and it's 5/16 outer diameter branch line. And you can put it into another piece of metal tubing with another pressure rating. And if it's an extremely snug fit, then you can have a higher psi rating because you'd put it inside of some slug kind of material. But at that point, you have an unrifled hunk of tubing. The best you could hope for is legally being able to get away with making a really low caliber shotgun, because it must have rifling if you want to actually fire a bullet. But for firing a blank, as long as you X out the bore this way and then this way, about that far apart from the shot, you can use it to fire a blank, or have it spray ported so it makes the make it not go in a straight line so it can't fire a projectile. Now, why would you do this? To test your blank gun and see if you can do it without blowing it up. Now, I have all the other listings below for 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1 inch inner and outer diameter with wall thickness material pipe. And the standard for short versus long 22 bullet. 1 in 20 twist for short, 1 in 16 twist for long, standard. This is what I keep finding. And it is based on a 5.56-223 groove diameter. Okay? The groove, not the land. It's how far etched out it is. And these 25 or 32 inch liners are used for making anything from rifles all the way down to pistols. If you buy material on purpose that is designed for what you're trying to make, legally, you don't have the option of failure. But again, these are liners. They require that you put them inside of a hunk of tubing that's rated to tolerate the pressure. But that adds to the pressure rating, right? Somewhat. It has to tolerate, the outer casing has to tolerate it as well. And again, we're talking about making a blank gun. Now, what causes this pressure increases? What causes the PSI rating to need to be there? The projectile. If there's no projectile, you can use a much lower pressure level. So you can get away with brake line. You can even get away with all sorts of things. And yet, for a short period of time, these objects, like literally a hollow radio antenna and other pieces of metal tubing, including copper tubing, will tolerate a bullet because they're not rifling, and most importantly, they're useless because they don't hold the bullet tight. The reason these things worked in the 60s and 70s is they threw a projectile badly to where it would wouldn't spin, probably tumble, and only good for a short range. And the reason they were made illegal is the bullets would go off axis so far that you'd end up having a curve a bullet moment where they would go and hit something you weren't aiming at, if you were even aiming. And unfortunately, people would load them with long rifle bullets so they'd have more power, or even a magnum bullet, or one of the intermediate types, instead of a short, and they would go a long distance and hit somebody that wasn't the intended target. They were considered literally a dangerous version of a gun. Making a blank gun can be done legally. The easiest way you can do it is you make a perfect one, make it perfect, and then on camera show yourself deliberately bending the barrel into a curve so that it cannot, under any conditions, fire a real bullet. Just curve it to where it does not fire correctly. It won't fire around a curve, it'll just not fire straight. Fire straight into the ground. That way it'll expend anything that might be in a blank. Now, why am I bringing this up? This is the first stage in making weapons, is you make things that aren't weapons, because you need to start that way. Now I'm going to bring up the next stage here. To make a giant cap gun, shotgun primer diameters will be listed below. They run around 24 caliber and 30 caliber and such. You can get all sorts of sizes for them, and you can make basically a big cap gun. And big cap guns made out of pot metal were sometimes turned into real guns because they have very similar sizes, because the primers and caps are almost the same size as a 22 in many cases. Hence the numbers. Gives you an idea why a lot of toy guns became illegal. Why they have to have all these restrictions on them. Because somebody's going to get a drill one day when they're drunk and make a dang gun that blows themselves up. And again, PSI ratings are based on working PSI or burst. Don't do burst. And again, you can get a barrel for $5 in some cases. don't make these things. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck.